Good morning, and welcome to LLT 121 Classical Mythology. Today we're going to be picking up with what I like to think of as the ultimate soap opera of Greek mythology, the so-called Theban saga. For those of you who've honored me with your presence this morning, I'd like to remind you that Thebes, the capital of Boeotia, Thebes, is the capital of, and Boeotia is the city-state right next to Athens, right next to Attica, where, as you've heard me say 1,000 times before, most of surviving Greek literature comes from. It follows, I believe, that Thebes and Boeotia are going to get the proverbial bum rap, as they most certainly will. The Theban saga, however, begins not in Thebes, but in ancient Palestine. Ancient Palestine is located on the present-day site of modern Palestine, wouldn't you know, which is right around here. Okay, Thebes is up here. Here we go. In a land known as Phoenicia, but now known as Lebanon, either Lebanon or something else. And the story involves a boy, a girl, and a bull. Hey, yeah. The boy and girl are the daughters of King Cadmus and Mrs. King Cadmus of Tyre. They have two kids, a girl named Europa and a boy named Cadmus. Europa is a very beautiful young woman. One day, Europa happens to be just walking by the seashore, and a very handsome bull comes up to her. The handsome bull is a very charming and friendly bull. If you care to go back and read the appropriate section from Ovid's Metamorphoses, please hold firmly onto your stomach because it is rather humorous about how the bull comes up to Europa and paws friendlily at the ground until finally Europa starts patting him on the chest and smiling and hanging garlands around his horns. Meanwhile, the bull is thinking, because who, Carrie, is the bull, really? Who do you think the bull is? Hazard a guess. Phil? That's not a bad guess, it's just not right. Scott? Zeus, darn it. That bull is Zeus. He's changed himself into a bull in order to ingratiate himself with Europa. Gentlemen, don't try this at home. It could be painful. Finally, Europa, the young woman Europa, climbs up on the bull's back and goes for a ride. A ride that ends on the island of Crete. Yes, it was. And by the time Europa gets to Crete, she is in the family way. Zeus and Europa mingle in love and have a kid by the name of Minos, who goes on to be the king of Crete, gets married to a woman with a thing for bulls, has a stepson who is part bull, and has a bull problem all the rest of his days. This is neither here nor there. We need to focus on Cadmus, the adoring brother. He finds out that his sister has run off or been taken away by a bull. Since there is no missing persons bureau in ancient Palestine, he goes to consult an oracle, the Delphic oracle, which has a 100% correctness ratio. And Mark, I'm not even going to answer your implicit question about how a kid growing up in Palestine is going to get the bright idea to consult a Greek oracle. No, Mark, no. Because the story, after all, demands it. I point out here, as a present to those of you who have honored me with your presence today, that legend, and you can write this down and spew it out for valuable points on your essay exam, because it's a sentence I made up myself and has been proven to be true, Kristen, really. Legend, by its very nature, contains a kernel of historical fact. Legend, by its very nature, contains a kernel of historical fact. Crystal?
What do you mean by kernel?
A little nugget, a little piece, a chunkoid. No, not a granule, because a granule is too small. Very shortly, this story, well, it's pretty weird already. But trust me, folks, it gets a lot stranger. And you're going to be very hard-pressed to think, what warped, sick mind came up with this pack of stories? I wouldn't blame you. I have wondered the same thing myself. But just remember that I said legend by its very nature contains a kernel of historical fact. And this one does. When Cadmus goes to the oracle, he is informed by the oracle, hey, that bull your sister ran off with, yeah, that's Zeus. Not much you can do about it, Cad. Okay. So the next thing the oracle tells him to do is to travel until you see a sacred cow. Okay. No, not a Hindu sacred cow, but just your basic garden variety moo-moo, who just happens to be sacred. Follow the sacred cow until she falls down and dies. And found a city there. Which he does. Okay. Cadmus founds a city there, and the city, he decides to call it Cadmea. I pause for a question there. Yes?
I have a question. Whenever Zeus and Europa had Minos, was he actually still a bull, or did he change into Zeus?
Let your imagination be your guide, Crystal. They don't talk about that. Even Ovid never really came up with an answer for that one. It's a valid question. If I were forced to guess, I would say that Zeus probably Zeusified himself from a bull because Minos turned out to be completely human. But I just made that up to make you happy. Regina?
If the oracle is always 100% correct, how could somebody interfere with it and make up an answer that wasn't really what the oracle said?
They could do that whenever they want. It's just a matter of getting away with it. And getting away with it depends on how dumb the person you're trying to mess over is. Okay? Somebody tries to convince me of a false oracle. I've got a PhD in this stuff. I'm not going to fall for it. If, on the other hand, you try to convince somebody who's really mentally challenged, you might get away with it. Okay? Thank you, Josh. Thank you. So here's what happens. The cow dies. Cadmus decides to sacrifice it to the gods. But in order to have a good sacrifice, you need water. And there's water, all right. But the water hole is guarded by a giant serpent. That's the only way I know how to draw a snake. We could hold up Mike's hat if we wanted. He kills the snake, and all of a sudden this voice comes out from the sky. You have incurred miasma. Because the snake, as it turns out, is the son of Ares. I don't even want to make up an answer for how Ares, god of war, successfully begat a son who was in effect a serpent, but my sources tell me this happens all the time in classical mythology. And so I'm not even going to make one up for that. But Cadmus doesn't have to atone for this miasma immediately. He is informed that he will spend the rest of his life, after he goes on to be the king of this town, he will end his days as a snake. Well, that's something really worth looking forward to. I'm going to end my days as a snake. The next cute thing that he is told to do, or does, God bless you, is that he sows the dragon's teeth. He is told if he wants to populate the city, he is to sow the dragon's teeth, which he does. And all of a sudden, all sorts of armed men pop out of the earth, complete with all their necessary weapons, and start fighting him. But our hero, Cadmus, catches a clue. He takes this humongous rock, throws it into the middle of them, and they start fighting each other. Yes, until only 5 of them, the men, are left. These individuals founded 5 families called the Spartoi, or the quote-unquote sowed ones. And they were considered to be the 5 leading families of ancient Thebes. You'll recall when we were discussing the legends of Attica about that interesting King Eryxthonius, who was born from an unusually fertile, shall we say, patch of ground. This is another legend which is basically cooked up to explain how the greatest families of our town literally popped out of the earth. It's none too satisfying, but this is the palette they had to work with. After founding the city of Cadmea and populating it, so to speak, Cadmus is forced to atone for his miasma in killing the snake, who was the son of the influential war god Ares, by being purified by serving as Ares' servant for 7 years. Or 1 year, depending on what version of the myth. Maybe, I know they were dog years. At the end of his service to Ares, Cadmus is given as his wife the lovely Harmonia, daughter of Ares. Now, you may ask, how is it that a god of war, good god, what is it good for, is going to have a daughter named Harmonia? Because that's the way the story works out. Cadmus and his wife Harmonia have a number of kids. You may know them. There's Ino. Anybody remember Ino? Where was she last seen, Regina?
Trying to get Prixius.
Wicked stepmother from the Jason story. Way to go. You didn't say it was the cow. That was Io. Way to go, Regina. Put your head on the desk. You may take a nap for 5 minutes. Does anybody remember Agawe? Ooh. Anybody? You might remember her kid, Pentheus, who makes his last appearance in classical mythology right at the end of Euripides' Bacchae. He's the guy who fell to pieces when he was torn apart by the Bacchic women out on the slopes of Mount Cithaeron. Then there's Autonoe. You may not remember her, but you may remember her son, Actaeon, the fellow who was torn to bits or sparagmossed by his own dogs after he saw the goddess Artemis naked. Remember, she turned poor Actaeon into a stag, and the hunting dogs tore him apart to bits and bits. Boy, two sparagmosses in the same family. Finally, daughter number 4 was Semele, who had the honor of giving birth to the great god Dionysus. That was the good part. The bad part is she turned into a heap of smoking ashes. This is not what you would call the proverbial great big happy family. Cadmus and Harmonia rule the city of Thebes for a nice long time. Okay? And among other things, they are said to have taught the people of Thebes how to write. They were said to have taught the people of Thebes how to write.
Wait, no. I was just going to ask about Cadmonia. The city Cadmonia. How did it get turned into a city?
Oh, we'll get there. You're not going to like it, but real stupid etiology. And after they teach their children well how to read and write, they go on to that career that Cadmus had been promised. They are both turned into snakes, and they slither around the Mediterranean world, converting people, or trying to convert people, to the religion of Dionysus, their grandson. Eventually, they slither off into the Elysian fields, where they are happy forever after. I pause for your questions.
How come they didn't rule the city Cadmonia or whatever instead of Thebes?
Well, that's what Fairlyn was kind of asking me too. Because, well, put it this way. Let's say that you were eventually going to have a granddaughter named Jennifer who is going to marry a guy named Bob. And you founded a city, right? Are you going to name it after your future granddaughter's husband? No, you will probably name it Crystal City or something after your own bad self. Cadmus, it makes sense that Cadmus is going to name the city Cadmea. It became known by another town, by another name, and we're going to make up a really stupid, entirely unsatisfactory etiology for it. You're not going to like it. Okay? My guess, and this is strictly a guess, is that the people of the town of Thebes wanted to say they were founded by a really neat hero. Okay, Athens was founded by Theseus. Okay, Argos, that's where Perseus came from. Mycenae has its own heroes, and here we are in stinky old Thebes, and we don't even have a great hero to claim as our founder. I know. Let's make up a story about how Cadmus actually founded our city. Do you see how that works? The people of Thebes probably wanted an extra prestige bump, and they couldn't say that their city was founded by somebody named Thebes, because there was nobody named Thebes that anybody ever heard of. So they take Cadmus instead. That's the best I can do.
It wouldn't stop them from making up something named Thebes.
Oh, they did. It just, Thebe turned out to be a girl.
Oh.
Okay, we'll get there in a second. I pause now for a kernel of historical fact. Does anybody know or recall the original writing system that the ancient Greeks had? They used a pictographic system. Originally they had linear A, and linear B was a revised, reformed pictographic system. What do I mean by pictographic? If I want to say, "My honey, I love you," I would draw, Winnie the Pooh's honey pot, and I a heart, which means love. I can't draw these characters for squat. And a little female sheep. That's what I mean by pictographic, where symbols stand for sounds or sometimes entire ideas, as opposed to the alphabet, in which letters stand for individual small sounds. Do any of you know where the alphabet is known to have been invented? Matt? In ancient Phoenicia. How do you think it came to ancient Greece? From Phoenicia. The Phoenicians were great traders. The Phoenicians founded cities all over the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians founded cities in Spain. Those danged Phoenicians were everywhere, bringing their cool purple clothes, their hot flashy ships, and this concept of using symbols to represent individual sounds. The award-winning Phoenician word for ox. An ox is a neutered steer, bull, cow thing, is aleph. And they used, to represent the initial sound of aleph, a very simple, easy to draw, nothing near as artistic as I drew here, representation of the head of an ox. And they call that the letter Aleph. By the time that the traders from Phoenicia, over a period of years, we don't know what day it happened or when, this concept of an alphabet made its way over to Greece. The alpha had turned itself over 180 degrees. Greeks couldn't pronounce Aleph, so they called it alpha. The word alpha didn't mean anything like ox to the ancient Greeks. This didn't look like the head of an ox to the ancient Greeks, but they liked that idea. It made it a whole lot easier for the ancient Greeks to write down stuff that they had only known orally, by word of mouth, for centuries. Like the poetry of Homer, for example. Hey, let's take this alphabet and write down the whole Odyssey and Iliad. What a great idea. And if the ancient Greeks, well, you folks have all taken history or are doomed to take history someday. I love history. If you were to read in a book that on September 7th, 1426 BC, about 2 a.m. in the morning, a Phoenician trader named made a gift to an ancient Greek named Hippocrates of the alphabet, complete with instructions. You'd let it run right in one ear and out the other. But through my telling you that this girl ran off with a bull, that's pretty cool, and eventually the Greeks learned how to read and write, you will remember for the rest of your life that what we now call the alphabet is something that the Greeks derived from the Phoenicians. Folks, it's a known fact. Hiding behind this silly legend of a man and a woman who got married and turned into snakes and went around as an Dionysiac evangelistic couple for years, spreading the good word of Dionysus. I mean, you think that's too weird. But buried in that story is a kernel of historical fact. I pause for a question up to this point. Mark?
Cadmus was in the Bacchae, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't snakish then, was he?
No, he was thinking about getting there. Okay. One of the neat things about ancient tragedy, Mark, and this is a good question, by the way, is that you can bend the characters somewhat. You can bend the storyline somewhat as long as you don't break it. I offer you as an example that award-winning television show. Sorry to date myself here, Matt, but don't worry, this show is going to be on reruns forever. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. The show Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, I have come to realize, serves a need. It presents a side of the West that women enjoy watching on television, the sort of show, the sort of empowering plots and characters that if your 10-year-old daughter watches a Clint Eastwood shoot-'em-up, she would get the impression that all women were either, shall we say, quote-unquote, professional women or wives or cooks. That's not good. Your 10-year-old daughter can watch Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and say, wow, here's a woman who's a doctor. Wow, here's a woman that people listen to, and here's other women that are off having lives and stuff like that. It's wonderful. It's empowering, but the fact is, I'm very sure that it did not happen. That's okay. It serves a purpose. Sometimes we need to reinvent our past. Okay, God knows that there need to be more shows that are family-oriented, and especially your little daughters can watch and think, hey, girls can kick butt too. God bless whoever invented that show, even though it drives me nuts. It's the same thing with Euripides' Bacchae, Mark, and everybody else. Euripides introduces the character of Cadmus into the play, even though most mythological traditions say he wound up as a snake. Cadmus is introduced into the play to conflict with Pentheus. Pentheus, if you'll recall from the play, the guy who succeeded Cadmus, is the hard-hitting, fire-breathing, law and order, love it or leave it, none of this purple little fruity Carmen Miranda religion in my city, thanks, kind of guy. As opposed to Cadmus, the old-time king who's been around. He knows he's going to wind up as a snake. He is therefore more flexible. And you'll recall what Cadmus says. Yeah, I'm going to dress up in this leopard skin. I'm going to try this new religion out. It's good for the state. Only Cadmus could get away with saying that in the Bacchae. Cadmus shows a side that you might associate with political expediency. Cadmus thinks, well, if it's good for the state, I'm going to dance like a Dionysus girly and go out there and go woo, woo, woo. That, I submit, is what Cadmus is doing in the award-winning Bacchae of Euripides. Other questions? Ray?
So do you, do you find places where you know they've lied?
Yes.
I see. That's all I wanted to know.
At the very beginning of one of the very first pieces of Greek literature, I speak here of Hesiod's Works and Days, or it's either the Works and Days or Theogony. I think it's the Theogony. Hesiod describes himself as a poet, right? And he's just sitting under a tree in Boeotia. Hesiod, believe it or not, is from Boeotia, the one Boeotian who never gets dissed in all of ancient Greek literature. And he said the muses came to him. They called him a fat-bellied pig just sitting there snoring. He said, we're going to inspire you to write beautiful poetry. We're going to tell you all sorts of lies, too. Oh, yeah. They lied like rugs. They all did. I mean, think about Odysseus. You know, as he's lying, cheating, and fornicating his way through the second and first halves of the Odyssey. I added that as an afterthought. I mean, he just lies all the time. He lies to Athena. Okay? You know, Athena finds him sleeping. Odysseus wakes up, and Athena's disguised as a shepherd. She says, now who, sir, are you? And she knows who he is. She's Athena, damn it. Right? And Odysseus wakes up and stretches and goes, oh, I'm this mercenary. I was kidnapped by pirates, man. They just ditched me here. And she thinks, and she says, you lying sack of feces. I know you're Odysseus. Darn it. And every time Odysseus is asked who he is, he makes up this big, long lie about who he is. Just lies through his teeth all the time. He can't help it. And I can't help but think that this is Homer, the poet of the Odyssey, or whoever wrote the Odyssey, hinting that he or she, too, is a great, big, bleeping liar all the time. You see what I'm getting at? It's like when we reinvent our histories. When you're dating somebody and you're telling that special someone or the person you hope will be that special someone the history of your family. You know, your parents met in the prison. You know, oh, mom and dad were in this building together working. You know, you reinvented. You start out with the little bitty lies, like, no, you were the first one I ever dated and really loved. You know, and pretty soon it comes out, you know, that you loved so-and-so, so-and-so broke your heart. Yeah, everybody tells lies, Ray.
But, I mean, if they do it in the sense that they think a lie is better than the truth.
Sometimes a lie is better than the truth.
Their idea of the truth. Because their idea of the truth is the best idea of the truth.
My idea of this is getting too metaphysical. Okay. We need to make the story move along. I obviously get wound up about this subject. We can take it up in the parking lot after class. But sometimes a lie is better than the truth. I say that from the bottom of my heart. I lie to you people like a rug all the time, and it's part of my success as your teacher. Now, especially about, well, how did I lie to you about a test? Supposedly, Pentheus succeeds Cadmus, one way or another. We know what end Pentheus came to. He was torn apart, bit by bit, by his mom and his aunts out on the back of Mount Cithaeron. He was succeeded by this mythical king, well, hell, everybody is mythical at this point, named Labdacus. Cadmus was succeeded by Labdacus. Pentheus. Yeah, what I said. Pentheus was succeeded by Labdacus. We're going to leave Labdacus here for the time being so that we can get into an utterly, unbelievably confusing story, account, one of which not even Herodotus or Thucydides could make sense in the long run. Labdacus dies, leaving behind an infant son named Laius. Since Laius is too young to rule Thebes, he's just a little baby, Laius goes off and lives in the city of Argos. And this dude by the name of Lycus, this dude by the name of Lycus, who is the uncle of Laius, and don't ask me how the family tree works out. I don't know. Morford doesn't know. Leonardon doesn't know. Ovid doesn't know. Zeus doesn't know. Lycus and his wife Dirce. It so happens that Lycus has a brother named Nycteus, who has a daughter. That's fine. You're supposed to be confused. I'll circle the names of people that you should know about, okay? Nycteus has a daughter. Pardon?
Dirce's the mom of Nycteus.
No. These two are married to each other. Nycteus and his wife, Mrs. Nycteus. Okay? Yeah, he's a brother. Okay, hand me the book there for a second. God knows that I hope the earth would rather just open up and swallow me before I bungle this up. Yep, I was right. I generally am. Good catch. Have a daughter by the name of Antiope. Now, this is supposed to confuse you. Antiope is so beautiful. Antiope is so pretty that she attracts the attention of no less a swinger than the father of gods and men, loving husband of Hera, and number one cause of teenage pregnancy in ancient Greek mythology, Zeus. She gives birth, she bears Zeus 2 kids. I love this. Their names are Amphion and Zethus. Meanwhile, bad King Lycus, he's not really the king, he's ruling as regent for baby Laius, is not happy that his niece has given birth to 2 children of Zeus. So he tries to exile Antiope and the 2 little boys. To make an amazingly long story as short as possible, Amphion and Zethus make a strong comeback. They kill Lycus, they kill Dirce, and they immediately set themselves up as co-kings of the city of Cadmea. It's still called Cadmea. Amphion is married to a princess named Niobe. They have 7 sons and 7 daughters. You know what happens, right? To the 7 sons and 7 daughters of Amphion and Niobe? Phil? They get killed. I'm telling you, the gods hate Thebes. And Zethus was married to a promising young sea nymph by the name of Thebes. And they decided to name the city Thebes after her. A very unsatisfactory etiology. Regina, question, comment?
No.
Why her instead of Niobe?
City after some woman kills like all of her kids off.
Thank you, Farrellyn. That's pretty good. It just happened that way. Why did your folks name you Mark? Why were you a boy instead of a girl? Well, why were you...
Who killed the 7 sons?
Artemis killed the girls and Apollo killed the boys. You'll recall that Niobe was bragging about what a great mom she was because she had 14 kids and Leto only had 2. Ha ha ha, Niobe, now you got 0. Supposedly, Amphion and Zethus ruled together for many, many years, which in and of itself is an odd thing in Thebes. Because this is the one instance of an orderly succession of power in Thebes. The 2 brothers got along together, ruled until they died of old age. That's right. These 2 little babies who were exposed at birth by their evil uncle eventually became the 2 joint kings, got married, had families, built up a city, and died of old age. And then, after Amphion and Zethus died, Laius was ready to become king.
Laius was the son of Labdacus.
Yes, and
Lycus then.
he was related.
I see.
Kristen.
Was Lycus the one that was mad that she had Zeus's kids?
Yes. Okay, Labdacus dies. Lycus takes over as regent because Laius is too young. Laius's niece gives birth to 2 little baby boys. The 2 little baby boys grow up to be kings of Thebes. They die of old age. They don't die in early death, they die of old age. They live their entire lifetime, and when they have died, then we go back over here to Laius. Has anybody checked the math here? He must be awful, awful, awful old.
He was George Burns' oxygen chamber.
No, he is somewhat of a medical miracle, but that's not it. Apparently, Laius just lived in Argos actually, he lived in Elis. It was Elis, actually, with Pelops for years and years and years and years and years. He got kind of lonely after a while. And in one instance, Laius ran off with... what the hell was this guy? The son of Pelops. Just took him across the state line for immoral purposes. Chrysippus, that was his name. Doesn't matter. What does matter is Pelops was so angered at Laius' ingratitude. Here, I put you up for 93 years, and you run off with my son. Curses on you. He cursed Laius. Pelops. And because this guy ran off with his son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that'd do it for you too, huh? Because in our next class, I'm going to draw a picture of a cute little baby on this side of the wall. Then I'm going to draw a picture of this guy with two eyes poked out of his head, and there'll be blood gouging out there. I'll try to bring color chalk so I can do a really good job. That guy is Oedipus, who begins his life as a little bitty baby. Cute little baby, never did anybody know. Well, his mom, probably had some complaints, but, a little baby who was, not evil, he was just a little baby. But winds up as this reviled man who pokes his own eyes out and stuff. And you're going to ask, what the heck did Oedipus do wrong? One very good answer is nothing. This is the old curse on his old man coming home to roost. Well, to make an interminable story short, I have your undivided attention for about 3 more minutes. Laius eventually gets to become king of Thebes. Laius gets married to a lovely princess by the name of Jocasta. Laius and Jocasta rule as king and queen for a while. But they've got a problem. They cannot beget an heir. This is important, as I've mentioned before. It's important to have an heir because it reduces greatly the chances of a civil war. And this is, after all, Thebes, the city that the gods love to hate. Yeah, sometimes it's an I also. Since there is no such thing as a fertility clinic in ancient Greece, Laius goes to the Delphic oracle. How can my wife Jocasta and I beget an heir? We've tried the usual method. And the oracle responds to him, you will have an heir, Laius, but he'll grow up to kill you. Imagine what this would do for your libido. On the one hand, as a responsible king of Thebes, which has had enough trouble over the years, you want to provide Thebes with an heir. It's your duty as the king to ensure the succession. On the other hand, this little squirt is going to grow up and kill you. Ouch. And the only thing you know for sure is that you will beget a son and he will grow up and kill you. All too often we fall into the very human trap of thinking we can elude fate. There are people in this room, I'm quite sure, who don't really believe that they are going to die. I didn't when I was your age. I thought I was going to live forever. Boy, was I dumb. Now that I'm old and follically disadvantaged, I have a far better appreciation of my own mortality. Laius, being human, Jocasta, being human, think, well, the Delphic oracle is always right. But what are we going to do? Fold up our tents and quit? We've got a life to lead in the meantime. And so what happens that, one morning, Jocasta wakes up, goes to the doctor, and finds out that she is with child. Oh, happy day. Oh, blessed event. been a good class. I'll see you next time.